This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman.
This is Will Friedle, the voice of the future Dark Knight, Batman Beyond.
And you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 357 of the DCAU Review. I'm one of your hosts, Cal. With me, my good friend and good brother, it's Liam. Liam, usually it is a Herculean-like task to have to review 2 Zeta episodes. We are not looking forward to it. However, this week is a momentous episode because it begins the official DCAU Review countdown until we are officially done with the Zeta Project. We are officially, with this week's episode, we have, including this week's episode, 5 episodes remaining of Zeta Project reviews. So we are just motoring through here. Another pair of Zeta Project episodes this week, including one that features, as we mentioned last week, a bit of a crossover, including some recurring characters, some returning characters that originally debuted in Batman Beyond. And then we have another episode that actually fills us in a little bit about the secrets of Zeta's past and how he came to be.
That's right. I liked, not to get too hard ahead of ourselves, I liked one of these and hated the other one. So, yeah, it sounds like a Zeta week to me. But yes, here we are talking about the next 2 episodes in season 2 of the Zeta Project, those being Rose Gift and Lost and Found.
That's right. And of course, before we get into our reviews this week, we will, of course, get the official IMDb synopsis for our first of 2 IMDb synopses this week. Before we get that, of course, we will remind you that the best way to support the podcast, if you're looking for a way to support the DCAU Review, is to head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU Review. And they are our unofficial sponsor of this week's IMDb synopsis. Buymeacoffee.com/DCAU Review is the opportunity for you to become an official supporter of the podcast. You can choose to support the podcast with a one-time support option, or you can become a monthly supporter of the podcast, which comes with some really neat perks. We have 3 different levels of which to become a supporter of the podcast, including our top-tier Super Friend level, which gives you the opportunity to ask us a question and have it read here on the air each and every week about the episode that we are covering. If you're interested in finding out more on how you can support the DCAU Review, head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU Review and support the podcast today.
Absolutely. So this is the synopsis for Rose Gift, which was written by Hilary Bader and Joseph Kerr, directed by Rob Davies, with music by Dynamic Music Partners and animation by Sunmin Image Pictures. And that synopsis reads as such. The Brain Trust kidnaps Ro to force her into helping them set off radioactive waves that would bring out children's psychic powers.
Boy, they sure do. Let's just score it and call it a day, shall we? No.
This sucked. Sorry, couldn't wait. Let's get into it.
He jumped the gun a little bit there, but we'll give a overall review again since we're reviewing 2 of these, and we know that those of you who are listening to this are the diehards and really just listen for either the torture or you want to hear us have fun with our review. So we start off here with a Zeta and Ro sporting new digs. They've got new clothes on, and they're certainly shopping about in this, what seems to be a very podunk, rural, maybe middle America town of the future. So we see Ro admiring a leather jacket that's on display as she's admiring it and explaining to Zeta again what vernacular means, especially when she asks if this jacket is her. Zeta then mirrors her image wearing the jacket. So he transforms or displays the image of her wearing the jacket to her. She, while gets some minor chuckles out of it, heads into the store to purchase the jacket, and Zeta is outside. We see that a guy, seemingly a farmer, walking past with a robot of some kind, is taking it to get it repaired. Just then, the robot produces a some sort of laser out of its stomach, and begins going on a reign of terror across the city. And it is only when Zeta, who is still disguised as Ro, jumps on top of the robot and uses his connection cable to reset it, does it cease its rogue activities. However, as we see, watching on is this mysterious man and woman, and they decide at once that they have to radio back to the returning Edgar Mandragora. So if we recall, Edgar, of course, is the son of Mandragora that's featured in the Double Date episode. That was obviously a retroactive Easter egg that was put in later on in Justice League Unlimited. But he made his first appearance in the Batman Beyond episode Mind Games, if you recall. And he's he's got mental telepathy here. And he's got a lot of overpowers, and we learn that he is kind of like if Professor X was evil. He's recruiting younglings, and he's specifically interested in those with powers. So this mysterious man and woman who witnessed what they believe to be Ro attacking this robot, think that she can communicate with robots, so she must be the next recruit. Edgar suggests that they bring her in against her will, whether she wants to or not. So it's at that point that Zeta begins being pursued by these two. Unbeknownst to him, he ducks down an alleyway, changes his look, comes back out. Zeta also sporting some new duds. He's got a really cool Zeta shirt. Like, it's a hidden, well, I guess we'll talk about that maybe in visuals, but it's got a giant Z and an E on it. It's pretty cool. So Zeta leaves our two mysterious individuals confused as they look down the alley where he just came out and don't see the girl. But then who should appear but Ro coming out of the store, and she's sporting that same leather jacket that Zeta was sporting when he stopped the robot. So this point, our mysterious man and woman track Zeta and Ro back to their hotel room. Zeta is going about trying to look cool himself now, trying on a bunch of different random goofy outfits, and Ro is about had enough of it and decides that she's going to go leave on her own to get something to eat, which I don't remember too many episodes where Zeta and Ro aren't with each other 100% of the time if it isn't like against their will, but okay, sure. Ro the teenager decides she's going to go out by herself to get some food. And who should she run into, of course, but a couple of gentlemen on some motorbikes, and then our mysterious man and woman who are tracking her. And despite her attempting to go back inside and alert Zeta, she is abducted by her kidnappers, who shove her into the back of this limousine and then take off. Zeta is able to hear her screaming just in time, and begins a pursuit of her, which brought to my mind here. No, I'll wait till we talk to the plot. There's a chase that occurs, and the motorcycles in tandem following behind. I guess they're the lackeys that belong to this group. Zeta borrows/buys a motorcycle from someone and takes off after them in hot pursuit. And then as the chase ensues, however, unfortunately, there's some collateral damage. A milk truck, one of those, Nuns and Dynamite. If it's not Nuns and Dynamite, it's always a milk truck. The milk truck gets inadvertently damaged in the firefight between Zeta and those in the limousine and the guys on the bike. So Zeta peels off for a moment to save the milk truck, the out of control milk truck, from crashing. And in the unfortunately, because of that, he loses track of Ro and her kidnappers. And that's where they drop Ro, and they kind of introduce themselves formally and let Ro just know. I can't even speak today. They let Ro know just why they picked her up.
That's right. And before I get into that, I just have to touch on you saying Edgar is kind of like evil Professor X, because now I'm just picturing Patrick Stewart with a skullet, and I just think that would be amazing. Imagine just like X-Men when he rose in there, like, "Hello, I'm Professor X, Wolverine. Don't be a solo guy. Be part of my team." Except he has a skullet the whole time. Completely different movie. Transforms it massively. Would have been amazing.
This is gonna
should have been done. Release the skullet cut.
This is gonna make a tremendous reel for social, so I'm just gonna throw that out.
1000%. But yes, as soon as you say that, I just started picturing Patrick Stewart with the long flowing hair, but still completely bald on top, and I was like, can't let that go, can't let that be forgotten. So from there, yes, we'll move on. As mentioned, Ro is thrown into this sort of barn area with these other two young kids who also have powers. They demand that Ro fix this bomb that has been malfunctioning. Which though she doesn't seem to be able to, one of the other kids, Zeta, is able to fix it with her own spectacular mental powers that are vaguely defined, as most of the powers of all of the characters are in this episode. Which allows Ro to sort of stay undercover as someone that can apparently talk to machines and fix them. So they at that point I begin to explain that they leave at this point, and the adults leave. Zeta explains to her that she fixed the device because she has powers and was actually the one who broke the bomb in the first place. Or it's not a bomb, it's the thing that's going to set off the radio tower bomb, whatever. Anywho, and then we get a little explainer that as to what the powers are here. Zeta obviously has some kind of telekinesis, but also she can bore holes in the ground and turn the ground into quicksand. So sure. I guess it's somewhat elementally based. And then Amp, the aptly named, simply amplifies the other psychic being's powers. Chekhov's psychic amplifier here. As the adults leave, Zeta mentions that she fixed the device, as mentioned. Then we get back to town where we see Zeta doing a little investigating. He turns into a young child and runs into the police station, trying to see if he can get any more information. And the sheriff isn't really sure what to think about it. But there is a deputy who runs in to tell him all about this milk truck incident, as mentioned. And as they're walking around, Zeta sees one of the thugs from earlier and decides he's going to go chase them down. And at that point, I think this is actually when they cut back, when the kids make their introductions to Ro, and she helps them or promises she's going to help them escape. We see Zeta in full. As tough as he can be, he goes into a futuristic biker bar, and which in toughness for Zeta is per Ro's earlier assessment that leather jackets make you look tough. He's put on a leather jacket in his disguise and proceeds to do a pretty good job of interrogating one of the thugs who had helped kidnap Ro earlier. And pins him to the ceiling with his extendo arms, which gets him to talk. So at that point, we cut back to the barn where Bombshell, the sort of lead psychic lady, starts to explain what the plan is here, which is there's a radio tower that gives off ultra-band radiation, which is apparently linked to people developing psychic powers. She assumes that Ro must be a local girl, and that must be how she got her psychic powers, was through the radiation that this radio tower gives off. Naturally, as one does. And so their plan is to put this magic device that they think Ro has just fixed onto the radio tower, which will amplify the radiation so strongly that it'll wash over the entire city, and it will either activate latent psychic powers in various people across town, or kill them.
It's basically the plot of X-Men 1.
It is. Scarlet Professor X is real. I knew it. But yes, so that's their idea. The big psychic wave that's either going to make more superpowered freaks or kill them. So at that point, Zeta arrives in his disguise, and as they're sort of continuing to lay out the plan, they try to figure out what's going on. Skiz, the third psychic, tries to help him. Excuse me. Skiz, the third psychic, tries to scan this biker guy's brain to figure out where he's been and why he isn't talking so much, only to find out that he can't read his mind. And Ro, in an attempt to try to save face, announces that he must be a robot and uses her fake powers to expose that by having him turn off his hologram. And at that point, the brain trust escapes with all the kids, and Ro tries to get them to not go through with the plot, saying that Zeta must be a robot that's working for the federal government, and therefore they have too much heat and they can't possibly pull this off. But instead, Bombshell says, "No, we're just going to go do it right now." So that moves us. So they head to the location of the power plant. Bombshell tells Ro to shut down the security department, which Ro tries to make a big song and dance of doing. And as Transita melts their way through the gate, they realize that the alarm has not been silenced, and it immediately goes off. But they just blow it up, and cops don't get there till the very end of the episode, so it doesn't really seem to matter. But I guess that alerts it's a loud enough sound that perhaps Zeta is able to find them, and I believe they had and that's right. No, they do cut back to the police at this point, where they're interviewing the thug that Zeta had interrogated, and as he's trying to describe this crazy man with extendo arms who threatened him in the bar, they get this alert that something's going on at the radio tower. And that being, I guess these are the only two cops in town, so they have to rush off to deal with it. So that sets up kind of our final bit here. Zeta arrives to try to disable the tower. Edgar and Skiz are attacking him and maybe seem to have him dead to rights. Everybody keeps falling and not falling off the tower. But Ro, Transita, and Amp kind of join up and figure out a way to help, which allows them to, as mentioned, as Skiz is trying to use his power to help Edgar and Bombshell communicate and keep everything on the up and up. We see that Amp uses his power directly on Skiz, and apparently he can turn up the power amplifier so much that Skiz can no longer control his own powers, and he has a little psychic freak out, which also conveniently mentally disables or knocks out Bombshell and Edgar as well. So they all drop to their knees in confusion, which gives our robot friend just enough time to get up to the top of the tower and disable device, and all's well that ends well here.
Yep. And thankfully, that's the end of the episode. We also do get, of course, the agents, or the two police officers decided that out of the goodness of their hearts, and because Ro and Zeta, despite the fact that they have the wanted posters in their office and it's very clearly dead to rights, they decide out of the kindness of their hearts to let Ro and Zeta go because they just saved the town. So. This isn't a great episode. It's cool that they brought some of these characters back. In reading on the DCAU wiki, I think Bob Goodman talked about, at least at one point, that this was a Hilary Bader original script that was originally designed for a crossover in season 1 with Batman Beyond. And interestingly, I don't know production-wise, I think this must be towards the end, and that Beyond crossover that we had a couple weeks ago, I think, I don't know chronologically what was produced when, but at least in the interview,
Countdown and the season 1 Beyond Zeta crossover both happened in like aired at the same time. So,
Okay.
but I guess by the time Zeta season 2 was airing, Beyond had already at least finished its original run. I'm not sure if it was still airing in reruns on Kids WB by this point.
But yeah, they apparently WB didn't want to cross over with a show that no longer benefited them from crossing over with, since Beyond didn't exist anymore. So they said, nope, no, thank you. So they just made Rose's character more important, I guess, for that reason. So, yeah, I don't have a ton of notes about the plot other than to say I feel bad in a way, like, for this show, because they could not, even in the interesting action sequences that we get here at the end, where things are supposed to be ramped up, and it's the most exciting thing that happens. First of all, every single episode, I would be curious to go back and look. I think every single episode has some sort of chase sequence in it, whether it's on foot or in a car. They have to have a chase sequence because that's the only way to manifest some sort of excitement or tension, or one of the two ways to manifest tension. And this one, it's like, boy, here we go, middle of the episode chase sequence where Zeta has to chase the bad guys, and something happens and Zeta gets foiled and he doesn't catch the bad guys and the bad guys get away. It's like, man, I wish there was some other action sequence that could be done to create interest or tension here. And it could be something as simple as a fight sequence where Zeta gets, his proverbial robot butt handed to him, and then later on in the episode he finally overcomes whatever that in another hand-to-hand combat. But because you couldn't do violence, couldn't do the violence in this episode, like them hurling things at Zeta as he's climbing up the side of this tower, they like hit him, and there's no indication that these things hurt him, bother him. Like it just like they hit him and they just bounce off, and it's just goofy. I don't know. So I feel bad that the writers were clearly hamstrung so badly with whatever the the mandates from the network were. So that's very frustrating, because I feel like you could have had an interesting fight sequence here between a robot and somebody that has, telepathic powers or telekinesis, and whatever the bombshell's powers are, creating energy blasts or whatever. You could have had something a little bit more exciting than just a chase sequence in the middle of it. Or like inferred threatening from Zeta to the biker gang when he's looking for Ro. There's just not a lot here. I think it's the bringing characters back that were established and Beyond, that you didn't really have to fill in a whole bunch of the backstory of them, because they kind of retell who these guys are within that first little sequence there. I think the idea that they're going around, and unlike Professor X, who clearly has the children's best interests at heart, this guy, it's like, well, what if Professor X was evil and he's just recruiting kids to create an army of evil X-Men, essentially, or to use them for his own personal gain, and then we're just going to redo the plot of X-Men and try and turn everybody into mutants. Or I guess there's not they didn't give them a cutesy name, amplify their powers even more. I think it's interesting that the kid, it is, I feel like, Kids Cartoon 101 that you allowed the two guest star kids the opportunity to sort of ultimately thwart the bad guys. But I think you have to, with them being borderline kidnapped from their parents, or taken from their parents under false pretenses, gives them a little bit of revenge, which is nice. But and they get to go home to their parents at the end. So yeah, it's fine. Not the worst Zeta episode I've ever seen. I think there's just more opportunity and more interesting things could have been done, maybe if the gloves were off and you didn't have to put the the barriers on the writing staff here. So I went with a 4 out of 10 for my plot score. What about you?
Yeah, I went 3. Yeah, like I said, it's hard to put too much of the blame on any individual writer for this. Obviously, again, this is technically 2 writers. This was based, as you mentioned, on the outline by Hilary Bader and then finished up by Joseph Kerr. But yeah, it's just not that interesting. The amount of like happenstance. Also, you establish very early that Skiz is a psychic and can read minds, but he never reads Rose's mind and sees that she's lying about being able to fix the bomb. It's just not that interesting otherwise. I don't think the kid characters are particularly interesting. They don't really have personalities. And the Zeta kind of investigation subplot is kind of cute, but it's not much of the episode. And then yeah, the plot being, yes, as you said, basically rip off of the first X-Men movie. But yes, they're gonna amplify a radio tower to give people powers. It's just silly. Like it's just very silly, even for this very silly cartoon. And as we'll talk about, I have good things to say about the next episode, even from a plot standpoint. So like it's even within the barometers of what they were asked to do, I think a lot on this show. And obviously I understand you can't be the world can't be at stake in every episode and all that, but yeah, this was just it's kind of a letdown for what feels like another one on paper, where if you just say like, okay, we're bringing over these characters from beyond, and they're trying to do something that Zeta and Rogue get involved in, it's like, okay, that could be kind of fun. And Zeta going up against Psychic, that's like a weird styles clash of like characters to deal with, like the transforming robot against people that can blow up cars with their minds and stuff. That's a very interesting matchup, like power wise. But they barely interact because most of the episode is him just kind of looking around for them. So yeah, unfortunately, just not very interesting of an episode.
Here we go. All right, Liam, let's move on to our second category of this first episode, and that is going to be animation and visuals. Once again, as you mentioned at the top, Sunmin Image Pictures responsible for this. And if we recall, they actually did Hunt in the Hub last week. So we talked a little bit about them. This week, I think I had, as far as the way that the show looks, Zeta looks a little buffer, I feel like. He went to the gym. He's a little more jacked than his normal self, I feel like, in this episode. That's the only thing looks-wise as far as Zeta is concerned. We will, of course, mention that the returning Edgar Mandragora and Bombshell both have looked different than the way that they looked in Beyond. Beyond, he still had the pale white skin of an albino, and he had like black eyes with red irises, much scarier looking and freakier looking in that episode, as I recall, than this episode's appearance. Here, he's just kind of he kind of looks like the Penguin with white hair and less of a fine Roman nose, as he would put it. I feel like he's just kind of a larger fella, and Bombshell looks nearly completely different than her original look. She's got purple hair now. She I guess while she was gone, she decided to go get her hair did, and she just kind of looked like, I don't know, couldn't even tell you what she looked like.
Looks like a generic like witch character from like a public domain version of like a fairy tale cartoon.
Sure. Yeah. That's a good call. So I feel like this is a downgrade for both of these characters. Again, maybe that was done to make it a little less creepy and scary for this show. I don't know. Hard to say. That would be a question for the showrunners, obviously, but not my favorite. The character of Skiz, kind of cool. Like, just he has these weird sunglasses that kind of remind me of what's the
Juice.
Juice. Okay, that's it. All right. Kind of look like the same glasses that he has on. Um yeah, so and then he takes them off and he's got these kind of glowy eyes. So he kind of at that point resembles isn't that what like 90s Black Lightning looked like? He kind of had that
Hmm.
those he had a flat top and those kind of pupilless eyes. Um so kind of an interesting look. I think the most interesting thing about him is the manifestation of his powers that we get to see happen twice. It feels very much out of a Jack Kirby comic book to me, almost like you see his head kind of, or any comic book,
Hmm.
really. His head is just kind of floating there, and you kind of get this trippy green and black sort of flowy waves that are flowing around and then twist and turn. And we see it at the beginning. And then we see it ultimately at the end when he loses control of his powers. And I thought that sequence at the end, honestly, where he loses control of his powers after Amp is sort of manipulating his mind at that point. I
Hmm.
thought that sequence, I was like, whoa, this is real trippy and real different than what we're used to seeing with just kind of paint by numbers looking stuff on a show here. This is heads were like melding together and flipping and turning, and it was a really trippy sequence. And obviously they had, they were the ability to kind of put quote unquote realism on hold there and make it a little bit more of a trippier sequence. But I was actually pretty impressed with the way that that ended up turning out, especially for a Zeta Project show. But that was ultimately the thing that kind of stood out to me as far as that's concerned. And then we have these two little kids that are there. I couldn't stop looking at Amp's mullet, which obviously has now come back into style. Is in,
Hmm.
well, I guess probably more in style now than it was in the early 2000s. But yeah, life is cyclical, I guess, especially with hairstyles. So yeah, but that's kind of the main note that I had was the sequence with Skiz's powers and kind of the downgrade with the way that those characters looked. And then of course we get our chase sequence, of course, that happens, which we talked about, kind of adds to the interest there and creates a little bit of action for our show. Anything stuck out to you or anything specific to chat about as far as animation visuals?
Yeah, not a ton. I think you kind of touched on all the big stuff there. I really didn't care for the redesigns of Bombshell and Edgar. Just I thought those designs and beyond, especially Edgar's, is so good. I think they did kind of replicate his powers in a fun way, as far as he kind of goes into like sort of the cross-legged stance and kind of floats in the air, and his hair kind of waves as he uses his power. So they kind of kept the visualization of his power the same, which I appreciate. But yeah, the design is noticeably different. I don't his skin tone is completely different than it was
Yeah.
in Beyond, and in Justice League Unlimited, where he appears as a little boy. So yeah, I didn't really care for those redesigns. The rest of it's fine, I think. Nothing really stood out to me as far as the action sequences. Zeta's wacky T-shirt is fun as far as a redesign for that character. There's a weird part where when the kids in Row are hiding at the end, and they like open a hole in like the side of a mound behind a tree or something.
Hmm.
And as they go to like sit into it, uh Rose hair is like clipping through the background. So like she's
Oh
supposed to be
no.
inside a cave,
Oh
and
no.
her hair is like sticking through it. And I don't think that was on purpose. So I don't know if that's like a something that can happen more easily once you switch to like digital animation, digital backgrounds. If that's something, obviously that happens. You think of that happening more in like 3D animation than you do in the 2D stuff, but maybe it can happen in that way too. So yeah, just not great. And because I didn't really like the visuals, and yeah, I ended up settling on a 4 out of 10 for my visual score.
Yeah, I went just 1 point higher. I was a little more generous. I went with a 5 out of 10. Yeah, I think that sequence really, the trippy skiz sequence was really the one that stuck out to me as something that kind
Mhm.
of caught my eye. But yeah, there wasn't a lot for the rest of the episode to write home about. All right, Liam, let's move on to our next category, which is going to be music. And of course, as you mentioned at the top, dynamic music partners responsible for the music here in episode one. Um, had a couple of pieces that kind of stuck out. I think the music when they were transporting Ro to Edgar, which I guess accompanied initially when they snatched her, and then kind of the chase sequence. I thought it stood out. It was unique enough as far as the way the way that it was composed and the kind of the rest of the music for the episode goes, which is again a lot of synth and a lot of strings and stuff like that. But that piece kind of stuck out. I had also noted the kind of like what I would call a prototypical children's cartoon song when of like flute when Ro is talking to the two kids and they're kind of all sharing their sad stories together about how they were snatched up or how they were taken from their parents under false pretenses, and then Ro shares her own story of being given up by her parents, and so that there's just some typical like heartwarming sad sack prototypical children's cartoon flute music that stuck out there. And then I think the only other piece that stuck out was there was this, to me, it was much more akin to a Beyond theme when they went into the biker, where Zeta goes into the biker bar to try and threaten the bikers. Did you pick up on that piece?
Yeah, that was actually one of my only notes for music for this one was the kind of it was definitely more and I believe all three of our dynamic music partners are credited in this episode, but yeah, definitely felt a little bit more a little seedier, a little bit more of that like Blade Runner techno dirty future music that I feel like we get in a lot of episodes of Beyond that isn't really so prevalent in Zeta.
Yeah, I agree. So ultimately, I gave music a 5 out of 10 this week. I think it's fine. Those couple pieces did stick out to me though, and I think the one in the biker bar was unique enough and kind of like more Beyond sounding that made me feel a little more at home. So 5 out of 10 as far as my music score.
Yeah, I gave the exact same score, 5 out of 10. Good, solid job. Nothing super memorable, but like we said, at least there's at least a few things we could pick out. So definitely, good, solid job done by all.
All right, Liam, let's wrap things up here with our final category of our first review of the day. And that, of course, is going to be our voice cast. A couple of interesting returning guests here. One very, very, very legendary name from the DCAU to talk about in a dual role. We'll go ahead and talk about this week's voice actors and actresses.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a couple names we would have talked about before. Playing the young version of Zeta when he transforms into little boy, Eli Marenthal, the voice of Hogarth in The Iron Giant, as well as has played the Tim Drake Robin in a couple of his later appearances, including in the episode of Static, The Big Leagues, and also in the Mystery of the Batwoman movie. So he's like slightly older teenage Tim Drake's voice as well, and was also the young kid in Where's Terry, Dak. So fun to have him show up here. We have Phil Lamar, as you mentioned. Never heard of him. He plays both the kind of confounded, constantly terrified deputy of the town, and also he's playing Skiz, the new evil psychic. We don't have the other guy in the previous Brain Trust episode was like he was just like an indestructible man, or he was psychically trained himself to feel no pain or something. So this guy has a lot more personality to him, and I think a lot of that probably goes to Mr. Lamar's credit, because he's just kind of like I said, his powers are, I think, a little bit more traditional in the psychic world. So, but yeah, I think he does a solid job. He's menacing, and he's trying to sort of be be a threat here. It's interesting hearing him in a villainous role, as we're used to him. And the deputy honestly sounds a lot like Static, ironically.
Agreed.
He pitches his voice super high for it, so it just kind of sounds like he's doing the Static voice. But it's kind of funny that worked out that way. But he does a good, solid job.
Yeah, agreed. It was. I honestly, I don't think Skits has enough lines at the beginning for me to recognize that it was Phil LaMarr. But as soon as the deputy started talking, I was like, "Oh, Phil LaMarr's in this episode." Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. And elsewhere in the plot, playing our other villain, Bombshell, we have Kate Jackson, who did voice her back in the Beyond episode,
So funny.
and yeah, which is I don't remember her being. She's a lot more, I think, a lot more camp, a lot more over the top here. But folks might, if you're a bit older or if you love vintage television, she was on something called Scarecrow and Mrs. King, which apparently ran for 88 episodes. And was also on the original Charlie's Angels TV series. Yeah, this was actually one of her. She did some kind of sporadic voice acting, but didn't do a lot of acting after that. So this is, in her last five roles or something that she did. But yeah, like she's very campy in this episode. She probably gets the most to do as a villain because she gets to be menacing and she's the one who has to explain this ridiculous plot that they've come up with and all that. I think she does a solid job, but it's the problems I have are more with what she's being asked to say than how she says it, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. It's she's definitely, what is the female equivalent to a mustache twirling villain?
Good question.
I don't know. She's very over the top evil. Like she's like Ursula from The Little Mermaid. Like she's just so very evil. And especially when she's giving the exposition about their plan and what they're going to do and what happens if people don't survive and all that. So she's heartless. She does a fine job.
Absolutely. I'll save our last villain for last because he's one or before we talk about our heroes because he's probably the most notable actor outside of our DCAU alumni. Elsewhere, we have Taylor Gifaldi playing Amp. Did some minor voice acting work around this time in his life, but doesn't seem to have stayed in the industry. Both him and Francesca Marie Smith, who plays Transita, they don't get a lot to do. Miss Smith, at least, she voices the character Helga in Hey Arnold, which is not a show I feel like we ever watched growing up. But
she does also play Annie in the new Batman Adventures episode Growing Pains also. So
yes, there's that. So that's actually, yeah.
She's a bit of a DCAU.
Memorable.
Yeah, I would say that bit of a I mean, that's honestly what stuck out to me. I was like, man, she's actually pretty good. Like she has some subtleties down in the way that she delivers, especially the first lines that she's giving to Ro when she's like, "I fixed it." Like she sounds very genuine in the way that she's talking to Ro. So I thought, as far as our amp, Mr. Gifaldi, incomplete grade, not a whole bunch that he's asked to do, but I thought that Miss Smith did a fine job, and it's like, oh, okay, this makes sense why she was called back in. It's like she does such a wonderful job in that new Batman Adventures episode. It was like, okay, she clearly had some skill here when it came to her voice acting. So yeah, I thought that they, despite not having a ton to do, I thought that she at least kind of shined in that minor role there.
That's right. And then just rapid fire here, we have Jeff Duchette or Dissette as the sheriff. And Philip Maurice Hayes as Earl. That's the thug that Zeta has to shake down. And then, yeah, our last villain playing Edgar Mandragora, though he doesn't speak a lot, is John Rhys Davies, who who is probably most famously, you would know that name as he's Gimli, the dwarf in the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Also has done a couple other voices in the DCAU, including he's Yosek in the Cape and Cowl conspiracy, the evil, vaguely Russian man who hires Wormwood to steal the Cape and Cowl, and then he also later will come back to voice Hades in a couple of episodes. So. Yeah, he like incredibly accomplished actor. He was in Indiana Jones as well. Like incredibly accomplished stage actor. wish he'd gotten more to do, because he has about 4 lines and he doesn't really say anything interesting or even really get to emote very much.
Mhm.
So it's kind of seems like a waste. Like it's another one of those ones where it's like, oh well, it's funny that they picked him to be in this show because he's, I guess at the time this aired, maybe only one of the Lord of the Rings movies would have come out, but it still
Mhm.
seems like a wild thing to have, the star of one of the biggest, movie trilogies of all time just voice a guy for like 5 lines in your show. But yeah, was like, oh wow, I didn't pick it out. Usually, I think he has such a distinct way of speaking that I feel like I usually do pick it out when he's voicing somebody in one of these. So yeah, I mean he's fine. He just doesn't get anything to do. It's another incomplete grade, I think, as you said.
I will say though,
Uh,
it's funny. I think with his performance, and uh, I don't think did Edgar have any lines in the Beyond episode?
Not that I
I don't think he
remember. I think
does, right? I think he's
he
just
has
kind of
some
floating.
grunts. He has some, yeah.
No real dialogue. So I will say, interestingly, I think Mr. Reese Davis at least somewhat sounds like he could be the offspring of Stephen Mandragora based on the voice
True.
actor that they had for that. They both have sort of this slight indiscernible regal yet uh some kind of dialect, like choice of accent. I'm not sure, but it's something. It's something. It was like, okay, I could see this guy being related to Stephen Mandragora, based on what I remember about his voice actor. So, yeah, as you said, incomplete grade. Feels like a waste. Maybe there were more lines that ended up on the cutting room floor or something like that. But yeah, for what he was asked to do, a fine job.
Absolutely. And then of course we just have our two main actors to talk about: Julie Nathanson as Ro and Diedrich Bader as Zeta. Again, not a ton for either of them to get to do. Miss Nathanson gets to do a little bit more because so much of the episode is focused on her interacting with the brain trust and interacting with the kids. So she gets a little bit to do as far as her trying to. I do like when she doesn't know how to fake having powers, so she's just kind of speaking like in very monotone voice, being like, "Reveal yourself, robot," or whatever. She's trying to talk to the alarm system. I think she does a good job with that. And then maybe Mr. Bader gets a little bit to do where in the bar scene where Zeta has to act tough for in front of the other bikers. So there's a little bit for them to do, but again, just I think this is again the plot not giving them a lot to do.
Yeah, they're fine. Julie Nathanson, I feel like has more of it to do based on her. She has some comedy lines, of course, when she's faking her powers. I thought those were obviously the
Mm-hmm.
the lines written for her, but the delivery of her like trying to talk to the security system at the end and pretending like she's fixing things using her quote unquote powers. And then, like I said, the little heartwarming moment that she gets between her and the kids, kind of sharing their stories as to, them giving her also the perspective of like, hey, their parents thought that they were doing the right thing by giving them up to Edgar, and they didn't intentionally, give them over to somebody that was evil. They thought they were doing the right thing, which then gives, Ro this different perspective on her own parents. I thought that was interesting. So definitely a different look, and she gets to kind of give a range of emotions throughout the episode. So solid from her. Unfortunately, Mr. Bader doesn't get a whole ton to do, but when he does, of course, it's perfectly acceptable. So that led me to give my voice acting score, Liam, a 6 out of 10.
Wow, very, very generous. Yeah, I just went with a standard 5. I don't think anyone's bad. I just think it's yeah, just unremarkable. And again, I don't put that so much on the actors as to the what they're given to work with. But yeah, just a good solid job, but nobody really stood out to me.
All right, Liam. Well, that will begin to wrap this episode up. Totaling everything up for our first episode scores, I end up with a 50% score here, or 20 out of 40. What about you?
Yeah, and I'm a few points lower at 16 out of 40.
Dang, did we disagree that much? That's crazy. I guess we did.
Yeah, Yeah, at least a couple of points in 3 of our 4. But yeah, I mean, rewatchability. Technically, these are returning villains, but there's nothing ventured or gained by knowing that these characters come back. So, and luckily
you're
this
the one who
happens.
said you're the one who made the argument a couple
Hold
of weeks.
on. Specifically because Batman and Ro meet for the first time, and then that's carried over into the episode, the Zeta episode.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I said that one's representative, because things that happen after it, like it sets up things later. This is more of like an epilogue to the previous Mind Games episode, and if you don't know about it, it doesn't set up anything else in the future. Although, is he named as Edgar in the original episode?
Nope, I don't believe so.
Oh man, it is then. Sorry, guys. Because that reveal doesn't mean anything to you in Double Date, your favorite Justice League episode. If you don't know his name is Edgar, you don't get that. You don't get that gag. So,
yeah. So
one thumb up.
I think
One
it's
thumb
a
up
thumb
for
up.
rewatchability.
We got it. It's important to. This one is actually somewhat important. The argument can be made to the DCAU as a whole, because we find out, retroactively, what happened to that.
That's our action item. If you can tell me a part where they referred to him as Edgar in the original Beyond episode, I will update my opinion. But I think until then, this is where we find out his name's Edgar, and then when we have that reveal in Double Date, they make sure to point out that his name's Edgar, which is only there to be a little continuity Easter egg gag. So yeah, I think this is it. This is a one thumb upper.
All right, I can't disagree with that.
DC High Volume Batman. The Dark Knight's definitive DC Comics stories, adapted directly for audio for the very first time.
Fear. I have to make them afraid.
He's got a motorcycle. Get after him or I'll have you shot.
You mean blow up the building?
From this moment on, none of you are safe.
New episodes every Wednesday, wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, Liam, let's move on to our second review of the day, and that, of course, is going to be the episode Lost and Found. The first episode, by the way, aired on April 27th, 2002. This episode originally aired on May the 11th, 2002. Here in the States,
Just
at least.
past the
WB.
anniversary.
That's right, exactly. What a momentous occasion. How shall we celebrate? No, actually, I think we might be pleasantly surprised by our scores at the end of this episode. I was certainly, not to give the whole thing away, but I was pleasantly surprised. So let's get the official IMDb synopsis for this second review, which of course, once again, is brought to you by buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review, the best way to support the podcast. Head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. Become a supporter of the podcast today.
That's right. So this is for Lost and Found, which is written by Randy Rogel, directed by Kurt Gaeta and TJ House, music by Michael McCuistion, and animation by DR Digital Co., which is also DR Movie Co., I think just before a name change. But and that synopsis reads as such. Events from Zeta and Ro's pasts are revealed while they're running from Crick.
Yeah, that's what kind of happens.
Yeah, pretty much.
So we kick things off, and this week we start off with a chase sequence. We don't have the chase sequence. We have our weekly chase sequence, and actually, I thought that was interesting. You kick things off right away. You're in the action. Usually, I feel like you are smack dab in the middle of like the coffee shop or a conversation between Ro explaining some slang word to Zeta, and here we have it. It is a very, very angry Crick. Crick, if you recall, he was in the episode, was it Taffy Time? I think.
Yes, which we also liked, ironically.
Yeah. So Crick, of course, is a ruthless bounty hunter who was sent after Zeta in that first episode. He apparently has an axe to grind with Zeta. He feels like Zeta is responsible for him now having a robotic arm, a robotic face,
He already had the robotic arm, at least. I think he does have more circuitry in his face now. But
Okay.
but I assumed it was because it was they were in that taffy factory for so long that he developed a real sweet tooth and it ruined his dental work, and so he's coming for revenge on that.
You know what we say on this podcast? It's canon until proven otherwise. You show me something that contradicts that theory. Anyway, Zeta and Ro are on a bike, and they're being chased by this very angry Crick. And as they are, the Crick is shooting a laser at them, just shooting it out after them. And then as Zeta and Ro appear to be pulling away, something happens with Zeta's eyesight, and he begins to not be able to see, and then eventually shuts down completely. Ro is able to maintain control of the bike at that point, and Crick is able to catch up with them. She crashes the bike, thankfully, is able to get off the bike. Crick catches up with them and is in hot pursuit of them. Out of desperation, Ro gets to a bridge and carrying Zeta on her back, essentially, hurls Zeta off the bridge onto a passing train, and she herself jumps on the train to escape, leaving Crick there shaking his fist as they escape. And then, without any other options at this point, this leaves Ro only one choice, I guess, and she radios Liam's favorite character in DCAU history. That's right, folks. It's the return of Bucky.
Boo!
We cut to Bucky, who is in his element, in front of a couple of computer screens, receives his call from Ro. She is holed up at a abandoned amusement park. Hard to say if it's abandoned or if it's just shut down for the evening. But they're there. She mentions that Zeta is on the fritz and that she needs some help. And Bucky said he is already in hot pursuit. He already knows where they are, so he is on his way there. So it becomes a bit of a race against time at that point as to whether or not who will find. Will they be able to fix Zeta first, or will Crick find them? So all of the finally Bucky arrives at the amusement park, and they begin to try and figure out what's going on. He diagnoses Zeta's problem as some sort of memory issue that causes his files to be out of sort, which is causing him to be shut down at this moment. And then we get Ro, who's very concerned and talking to Zeta, whose vision continues to fade in and out. And then we cut to this very interesting sequence where we learn, of course, it is a flashback, and we see that this is ultimately the secrets of Zeta's past and how he came to be, as we say, as we learn that this is his origin story here of when he went rogue from the NSA. So we see that he has been assigned to infiltrate this subject, Eugene Dolan, and Eugene is apparently connected to this terrorist group called Brothers Day, and the NSA is interested to find out what his connection is. We learn that he being Dolan, is responsible for apparently sending some money to and from Brothers Day, but they really don't know who's sending the money, who it's being sent to, who it's being funneled through, so they're trying to kind of uncover this trail, and they send Zeta to infiltrate as Dolan to his workplace. Dolan apparently has gone on vacation or is left on a work trip, actually. And so they send him to his workplace, and unfortunately he's not able to really ascertain any specific connection to what Brothers Day is. He does get a contact name while he's there, but he's not able to really get any additional information. So the NSA advise him that he has to go even deeper undercover, and that he has to actually go to Dolan's home and try and interact with his wife and kids and see if he can get some information there at the house. Why he couldn't do this covertly as a robot, I don't know. Feels like the NSA could have figured out some other way to covertly get into this computer, but they said, hey, the heck with it. We have this synthoid that can make himself look like anybody, so he's going to go there and talk with this guy's wife and kid. And we've seen this portion of Zeta's life alluded to, but we've never actually seen the actual outcome of what's going on here. But as we cut back, as Zeta is assigned to go infiltrate, we cut back to present day, where Bucky is once again working on Zeta's mind. Ro reminds him that when Bennett was trying to erase Zeta's mind, that he didn't help out, and that's why this is probably happening at this point. But she's clearly still irritated and upset with him. He doesn't understand why she's still upset and angry at him, but he continues to try and work on what's going on. But we see at this point that Ro actually gets to give her backstory a little bit too, where she tells all about what her life was like before Zeta and why she has this intimate connection with this Zeta infiltration robot, and really gives Bucky the backstory as to why she feels like she owes Zeta her life.
Yeah, absolutely. So we see that this is back when Ro was still in an orphanage, the Spring City Girls' Home, and she's sort of sticks up for a new kid at the school, or at the home that's being bullied, and ends up getting in as close to a fist fight as standards or practices would allow with these other kids, and is sort of picked off by the head mistress of the home, I guess, and told that she's going to be is going to be taken away, and she gets put into, I guess, whatever the version of like solitary is for a wayward girl's home. So, or she's on she's on latrine duty. So she's so as she's cleaning the toilets, she notices that the windows have bars on them, and she uses the bucket, uses the tools at hand, and smashes the lock on the window, which opens it up, and she jumps out of the way. And as she's making a run for it, she's just able to avoid the security guard. She hops the fence, and there she runs into the thug that we see her attempting to join up his gang with in the very first episode of Zeta, Slam, as he tells her he'll give her a place to stay, and she'll have a few tests to pass, which of course we see way back in the pilot episode. Thankfully, the DCAU wiki reminded us, which is that she was, I believe, attempting to steal something on his behalf in that first episode when we meet her. So it's quick, but we get that little bit of that little bit of backstory as she talks about how she, as you said, how she wasn't on a good path before she met Zeta, and she, his kindness and compassion for her kind of opened up a whole new world for her, as far as wanting to help people rather than continue hurting them. Just at that moment, we hear Crick arrive very loudly as he explodes into this abandoned amusement park, and gives them something of an ultimatum here. He says that either if they turn Zeta over, that he'll let Ro and Bucky live. However, if they don't, then he'll hurt them all. And so Ro urges Bucky to keep going, but they can't quite seem to get through Zeta yet. As we return to Zeta's flashback, and we see that he meets with this Titus Sweet character, and he learns that it's apparently, as far as Dolan is concerned, just a toy donation. And when he asks for the name of the person donating these supposed toys, Titus Sweet kind of pushes back on that, tells him to not ask too many questions, and they want to keep it anonymous, which at that point makes Zeta aware of the fact that Dolan is completely innocent, doesn't have any idea what he's doing. He's just being taken advantage of by these other gentlemen. So he at that point begins to disengage and leave the scene, but unfortunately, Dolan, the real Dolan, arrives back at his office at that exact moment, and Zeta is sort of forced to reveal himself to the man he's been impersonating, and decides to not terminate him at the last second, as his programming would tell him to do if he's been discovered. But he remembers the the joy in the daughter's face, and realizes that that girl needs her father. And so he chooses to spare his life and simply tells him to never tell anyone what he saw that day, as he transfers into his robot form right in front of Dolan, and then into another disguise to escape. And as that flashback finishes, and as Ro is sort of pleading for Zeta to kick out, she literally says, "Remember who you are," which is like the classic. I feel like that's a very classic line to throw out there. But yes, that does allow Zeta to reboot himself. As at first, Ro thanks Bucky for the talent, but he informs her that he is completely useless to this episode, as he is in every episode, and that it actually must have been something that Zeta did himself. At which point we get our final big confrontation between Zeta and Crick as they fight through the amusement park. They end up very early episodes of Batman the Animated Series style. They fight on a roller coaster, which is a lot of fun as they fight through the city. Eventually, Zeta is able to knock Crick off of his coaster and send him crashing down below into the harbor just outside of the amusement park, where Ro tells him to leave him, and that they'll let the authorities handle it from here. As, of course, we see Crick pop back up from the water, assuring that he's not in any mortal peril, but I guess is disabled. He's not so disabled by the water that he can't swim, but he's disabled enough that I guess he can't run away, as we learn in the next scene that he's been apprehended by authorities and returned to prison. So we got our little kind of postscript scene here as they're back at another internet cafe, one of the usual hangouts here, and Ro is sort of continuing to give Bucky a little bit more crap about leaving them hanging in a previous episode. But and she points out correctly that Bucky didn't actually do anything to help here, though Bucky does plead his case that the important thing is that he came back and he did try to help when the chips were down this time. So Ro admits that maybe she's just busting his chops, and maybe maybe it's okay. So as they literally walk off into the sunset, Ro asks how exactly Zeta was able to reboot himself and gain the strength to put himself back online. And he talked about being able to relive that memory of the Dolan family, since that was such an important moment for him, the moment he decided to protect instead of destroy. That that allowed him to, once that memory was recovered, he was able to restore all his other memories and get back to working order. And we fade to black. All's well that ends well, and we get a little nice visual, as we'll talk about, of our three heroes. Question mark. I question mark is for Bucky, but we see them all walk. We see them all walk off into the sunset together as they are newly refriends with Bucky, and Zeta and Ro are back on the road to whatever comes next.
That's right. All right, Liam. So as you mentioned, we both mentioned, this one was actually a very good episode. I almost like, and I think I was trying to put together what was it that made this one stand out. Like, this stands out to me as an episode. I was like, this could have fit into several other DCAU shows. I feel like, as a story, as opposed to many of the stories that we've seen told on the Zeta Project, where we're like, oh my gosh, this could have fit into any other goofy cartoon outside of the DCAU in this time frame. Like, there is an element to this that has heart to it, that has tragedy to it, that has you're developing these characters and kind of giving a little bit of backstory to their character and laying a little bit of a foundation and making them more dimensional. You're making a robot who's supposed to have this lack of feeling, begin to develop and experience human emotions. And how do you do that in a way? You have this really interesting story that you tell about his backstory, and then understanding that Randy Rogel's the person that's responsible for writing the episode, it kind of dawned on me. It's like, oh, that makes sense. He wrote multiple episodes or did teleplay for multiple episodes, some of the best episodes of Batman the Animated Series, including Two-Face, working with our friend of the show, Kevin Altieri, on that episode. Robin's Reckoning, some of these episodes, Paging the Crime Doctor, some of the ones that we really, really enjoyed and have looked back on, and you look at the story really driving those episodes. Like, of course, there are some tremendous musical pieces and visuals and great voice acting work, but the story really driving those episodes is what kind of makes them stand out as borderline masterpieces. I'm not ready to call this episode a masterpiece by any means. I don't think those two words can kind of go together when you're including the Zeta Project by default. But I do think that this episode I was a little worried when they started doing Rose's story. I was like, man, I feel like you could have just told Zeta's backstory and that being the focus would have been interesting enough. But then the fact that you tie it together and you kind of have, this is the foundation of what makes Zeta who Zeta is, and why we've alluded to it. Now we actually get to see it, and why it wasn't just he decided not to kill a bad guy. He decided, I can't kill this person because my programming is telling me to, because I've seen how much his daughter loves him. I've seen how much his wife loves and cares for him. And I also see that despite the NSA labeling this guy as a threat, and while he's obviously involved in the movement of illegal funds, that shouldn't be punishable by death. That's not worthy to be murdered simply because he discovered me as an infiltration unit. So right. I think that's really, really interesting. And I think that the way that this story was told was really fascinating. Remarkable way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think giving a visualization, there's a couple lines in that original Beyond episode in Zeta about him saying that he lived with this guy's family, and that he saw his daughter take her first ride a bike for the first time, and that kind of stuff. So like that, getting to see that visualized, I think is interesting. And then, yeah, like you said, it's not just that the guy isn't flat out evil because he's not really aware of what he's doing. Like he said, he thinks he's accepting simple like toy donations, and then Zeta overhears the bad guys saying, actually, he doesn't even realize that we're smuggling weapons in or whatever. So, and then also it's like, it's not just that he's not a bad guy. It's that he sees the joy that this guy gives to his wife and his child. And he realizes that's kind of that being the impetus for, his, Zeta, the unfeeling robot, beginning to understand sort of human empathy and love and compassion, and it overriding his program you could look at that as a little sappy, but I loved it. I love the way it was executed here. And then I think so those are kind of your emotional stakes as we've pointed out. It's what underlines what is it that made Zeta this killer robot, strike out on his own and throw down his weapons. And then the other side of it is there's real danger to the episode. Like Crick is a madman in this episode, and he's trying expressly to kill Zeta, and is very willing to kill Ro and Bucky as well. So it feels like there's an urgency to it, to when we go back to present day and they're trying to revive Zeta. And, to when Ro's grabbing him to throw him on the train to get away from Crick at the start of the episode. And then as Crick's kind of stomping around, threatening them, he feels very vicious and scary. We'll certainly talk more about that in voice acting and probably in visuals too. But yeah, like there's emotional stakes. It feels like there's physical, danger, mortal danger for our heroes in this episode. And it's all told in an interesting way. So yeah, big credit to Mr. Rogel on the script here. But I perhaps and this has to be the highest a plot score has ever gotten on a Zeta from maybe either of us. I gave plot a 9 out of 10.
Holy moly. Liam, are you
I
sure?
yes,
You feeling
I
okay?
think if Bucky wasn't in it, I would have maybe given it a 10.
You know what? They Bucky. I'm sorry. You can argue with me if you want to, and I'll break out that disagreement alarm real quick. But Bucky, they changed the Bucky character in this episode. Like he is not there. I feel like if you didn't come in vitriolly hating, I think you could. You everyone, not just you. I think if you weren't predispositioned to hate this character, I think you would kind of feel bad for him in that he doesn't get it at the beginning. Like he's being annoying and he doesn't get it at the beginning why Ro, has this connection with him, with Zeta. And then at the end, he's like trying to be accepted. Like he wants to be in the family now. Like he's ready to be a part of the team. And Ro is still being like mean to him. Because that's they have this brother and sister like relationship. So Bucky aside, Bucky was not written as the annoying character, I feel like, beyond maybe that very first interaction here. He's far like tuned down as far as the way his general demeanor is here. And he's actually helpful, and he diagnoses Zeta's problem, and he actually gets to be a little bit emotional and empathetic towards Ro and Zeta in the situation that they're in, ultimately. But it's crazy what good, solid writing that has more of a story that appeals to more than just whatever is happening on the screen and has something kind of under the surface, how that can really affect. That's not to say that any of the other writers that have written for this show either didn't try to do that or maybe were not allowed to do that. I don't know. But for whatever reason, Mr. Rogel was given the opportunity here and I think hit a home run. I didn't give it a 9. I gave it an 8. So I was close. But I dare say I'd be willing to say this is the highest either of us have given a plot as far as a Zeta for sure. It's 22 minutes and I thought it was really interesting, and they did everything they could to disguise the lack of violence at the end. We do get like a shot where we'll talk about it maybe in visuals, but there's a shot where we get a forearm to the face, no fists, but a forearm to the face. They got that one through. Mm-hmm. And then we have this, fight that's happening on the roller coaster at the end. And that felt pretty high stakes and not just like a cheap, we're scrambling to get away and have to trip up the villain to get rid of him. It did feel a little bit more akin to a DCAU cartoon. So yeah, a high praise from both of us on this one. Was not a slog to get through and was kind of kept me on the edge of my seat. And it was nice to kind of fill in some of the blanks here about the Zeta backstory and do so in a way that really played on those emotional heartstrings. So great job.
Agreed.
All right, Lane, let's move on to our next category, which is going to be visuals and animation. As you mentioned, DR Digital Co., aka DR Movie Co., responsible for this one. They've done a couple. DR Movie, of course, has done a ton of Justice League. Would go on to do a ton of Justice League Unlimited episodes and the Mystery of the Batwoman movie. And they did some other previously they did the Resume Mission episode that we covered last week on the pod, or 2 weeks ago on the pod. So as far as animation and visuals are concerned, I thought this episode looked good. There isn't much Zeta in the episode because he's incapacitated and he's in disguise the other portion of the time. I did think that Zeta's target here in this episode maybe bears a slight resemblance to writer Bob Goodman. I'm not sure if that was intentional or not, but to me, when I saw him, I was like, I'm pretty sure this character is Bob Goodman. I don't know if that
could be. Both created Zeta in a certain way.
There you go. But I thought that was interesting. I'd love to get that commented on at some point if we can get Mr. Goodman on the program. But yeah, I thought there were some more interesting visuals as far as this is concerned. I think, as we mentioned at the beginning, a chase sequence kicking things off was fine. Like, it created a little bit more tension right off the bat as opposed to dropping it in the middle of the episode, which I kind of liked for a change up. It just, Crick just wildly firing off his weapon and chasing Zeta, I thought was great. Zeta's vision, like them giving you the POV shots, I liked that because it was done in a few different ways. You kind of get the standard Zeta vision with the scanning and the different, statistics on the screen, and then it kind of fades out. And then there's another sequence where when they finally get to the amusement park and they're in the warehouse, just before we go to our flashback, Zeta's vision kind of pops on, and you see this blurry visage of Ro as she's talking and calling out to him, and then it fades out, but it kind of pixelates. There's like a pixelation transition into this flashback, and it takes a second to realize kind of what's going on, which I like. They don't flat out tell you what's going on. It just kind of pixelates and falls out into this, and then you kind of realize that it's this memory right from the get-go there. But yeah, I think that's interesting. I think the subtle things that they do when Zeta's going undercover is also interesting. I think how they decided to go about him kind of subtly starting to show some emotion as Dolan. He kind of has this sequence with his wife and kid at the table where they're laughing and they're having this excited conversation, and then the daughter asks him to kind of go for a bike ride, and he kind of looks confused, and then the wife kind of reassures him, yeah, it's great, it's still sunny outside, and he kind of gets this smile on his face. And then when he starts to see the joy that the daughter is having when she finally gets to learn how to ride a bike, also you kind of get this subtle bit of human emotion that's kind of sliding in there through his expressions on his face. I thought it was subtle. I like that, and I like the way that they're kind of showing you that he's developing emotions rather than just straight up telling you that he's starting to experience that.
Yeah, I think that was a really neat part. Excuse me, I can't talk. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. Some of the more subtle face animations that maybe are a little more difficult to pull off. It's a lot easier to do like a big surprised face, I would imagine, but to do like a subtle look or, kind of a raise of the eyebrows and that kind of thing to indicate and have it come across and still be clear what the character is thinking and feeling, I think is really, really good. So yeah, I like some of the more subtle stuff here. I am curious. We could have mentioned this plot. There's an agent who is not Bennett, who he's conversing with, that kind of has like the Reed Richards hair. I'm not sure unless maybe Kurtwood Smith just wasn't available. But I mean, there are other people at the NSA. It doesn't have to be Bennett, I guess. But it was just kind of interesting to me that it wasn't.
You think it was a Nick Fury stand-in or something like that? Obviously, he didn't have the eye patch, but I'm trying to think, is there like another like famous government agent that it could have been made to model after?
I don't know. Maybe it's Rick Flag Jr. or something. I don't know. But yeah, hard to say. But yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. That there's a bit where when he's talking to the guys who are the actual criminals as Dolan, where he asks, "Oh, who's making these donations?" and they kind of pause. You see him just subtly raise his arm, and the hologram goes away, and his like his wrist blaster comes out. Like he's like, "Oh, if they go," like he's ready to like jump into action. So again, sort of that subtle thing where his instinct is still to destroy at that point. So he's ready to kind of, if his cover's been blown, or if they attack him because they think they're onto him, then he's kind of ready to go. So yeah, I think there's some fun subtle things, and then I really like the amusement park as the backdrop. I think is always fun in an action cartoon. So like Krennic, when he's there blowing things up at the merry-go-round and whatever. And Randy Rogel loves to write a cartoon that ends in a merry-go-round or at an amusement park fight, huh?
Yeah.
But yes, I think that's a lot of fun. And then Crick and Zeta kind of struggling on the cars on the roller coaster, I think is kind of a fun way to end the episode too. So it's got a good flow to it. And even the chase at the beginning, like I said, when Zeta's or when Rose having to drag the unconscious Zeta and throw him onto the speeding train, and then run and jump onto it herself as Crick is kind of stuck behind just missing them. And as mentioned, I kind of like, you could tell there's some wear and tear. He's got more circuitry on his face, and then he has like a little bit of rust coming off of his robot arm. So he's like he's seen better days as a cyborg man, I guess. So they kind of made some adjustments to his character model for this slightly redone season 2 look for everybody as well. So yeah, overall, I think the visuals and animation are really strong here. We have 2 directors credited, which I feel like very rare that happens on these shows for whatever reason. But yeah, both Kurt Gaeta, who's obviously a veteran of all these DCAU shows, and then TJ House. But yeah, I think between, like I said, a lot of the subtle things they do, and then that final action sequence, I once again have a very high 8 out of 10 for my visual score.
Wow. You're just feeling real generous this week, huh? I was just 1 point lower than you. I went a 7 out of 10 for mine. Yeah, I think there is some really, really good stuff that's shown here. Even some of the like subtle things that we usually don't get to appreciate, like when Zeta is doing his recon on the computer at Dolan's house. There's a couple of shots where we get to see the reflection on his glasses that Dolan has. The computer screen reflects against them, and you don't see the pupils of his eyes, which gives him this sort of, soulless, robotic look. Again, something that you would see a cinematographer do to kind of drive home the fact that this character is soulless and robotic, and is going about his work as a robot. So he hasn't quite transitioned over to that more human-like synthoid character that we know and love. So just some subtle things like that, but some really interesting things that stood out that I think made this episode, again, it looks a little bit different than what we're used to when it comes to a Zeta Project episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a step up in almost every way.
All right, and let's move on to our next category, which is going to be music. Did you say Dynamic Music Partners once again responsible for this one?
I believe it's just Michael McQuiston credited on this one.
Okay, all right, Mr. McQuiston then gets the credit. Then didn't have a ton when it came to music, I will say. Our episode starting with the chase, of course, means that we're going to have this rapid, upbeat, high tempo music to kind of emphasize our the stress of our situation here, of our heroes being chased by the evil Crick. But other than that, there's this like 8-bit sounding music that pops up when Ro is running away from Crick. I think it's when they're in the I didn't notate it down. I just had the 8-bit note. I think it's when they're in the fun house, before the fun house, or not in the fun house, but at the carnival, before the carnival power comes on. And then we get this really unique theme that plays, that I guess is the theme song for the amusement park, that plays when the power gets switched on, which I noted, we talked about it during Taffy Time. Taffy Time gets this really fun, unique piece of music that belonged to the candy company. And now this one, it seems like Mr. McQuestion had a good time writing and composing this like imaginary amusement park theme song that just plays over the PA system as our villain is chasing our heroes through the amusement park. I was like, this is really fun. I really like this. Like you can listen to it probably in isolation and pick up the words about how fun the amusement park is and all of this stuff. Really, 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 really cute. Like I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and a good gag of it working in concert with the visuals and the story and the voice acting, as far as you've got Crix rampaging around, blowing stuff up, being all menacing, and then this song about like what a happy day it is playing in the background. Like it's a good gag. I feel like a gag like that always works. So yeah, credit to Mr. McQuestion for pulling that off of the music.
Yep. Again, I think because of this, we have some really interesting pieces. The 8-bit piece again feels like something that you pull out of like a Nintendo game, or our heroes being chased by the villain. So that kind of stuck out as a unique piece. Not quite like Batman Beyond style, not as much percussion or but again, not something that would be alien necessarily to something, because it's off the beaten path and not just straight up orchestral music. So I thought music stuck out a little bit more with those couple pieces this week. I ended up giving music a 6 out of 10. What about you?
Yep, same exact score for me, 6 out of 10.
All right, Liam, let's move on to our final category of the week, which is going to be our voice actors and actresses for this week's episode. And once again, we have a couple of very legendary DCAU voices in new roles here. Some would argue maybe a little distracting, but I guess we'll talk about that as we go through here when it comes to our voice actors and actresses.
Yeah, so some of our more modern, our minor characters, we have Mark Warden as Slam, the street tough that takes Ro in after her escaping the girls' home, reprising his role from the pilot episode of Zeta. Here, you have Steven Weber playing Eugene Dolan. I think this is a guy, if you look it up, you'll know him. He was on the TV miniseries version of The Shining. He plays, I think, the Jack Nicholson role of that, which I know Stephen King has always said is his preferred version of that story, interestingly enough. And he's also currently airing on or currently starring on the Chicago shows.
Okay.
He's the doctor on Chicago Med, but has also, I guess those shows cross over sometimes. Maybe we should, well, when we're out of DCAU, should we cover the Chicago shows? Is that our next podcast? We'll see. Maybe it all starts here. Dr. Dean Archer. Anyway, that's just Steven Weber plays. He's Eugene Dolan in this. He gets to play Zeta technically, because most of the episode in the flashback, Zeta is in incognito as this Dolan character. So it's interesting hearing him kind of establish. He's playing both the character and then like a stiffer, more robotic version of that same guy, trying to impersonate him. So he's got maybe a little bit more heavy lifting to do than it would appear at first glance. So a good job by Mr. Weber.
Yeah, I think you made a very valid point there. He does have to be a little bit more robotic, especially in his general responses. And it isn't all that different than what we're used to from Mr. Bader's sort of robotic delivery when he's doing Zeta. So yeah, I think a fine job by Mr. Weber.
Absolutely. And then playing Mr. Dolan's wife is none other than voice director Andrea Romano.
Of course.
Very funny. It's very obvious if you've heard her speak in any interviews, but it is fun. It's, as pointed out, even though you hear her voice all the time in these in these shows as a background character, or she's a cop here or a PA announcer here, not often does she get actually credited in the episode. So here she is, and she has, I guess, more a named character to voice. So Yeah, that's a little bit of fun. And then we have Lily Ishida playing Dolan's daughter. Not a ton of voice acting to her credit. She had done some work on the Lilo and Stitch TV spinoff, but not a ton of credits to her name as the little girl otherwise. But yeah, those three together all work pretty well. And then we have voicing this mysterious agent who is Zeta's sort of handler for this mission he's on. The non-agent Bennett character is Richard McGonigal, which is maybe not a face you would recognize, but if you have played the Uncharted games, you would know that he is the voice of Sully, who's the mentor character to Nathan Drake in those games. Also voiced Carmine Falcone in the Telltale Batman games. So yeah, great voice. Again, another guy. He's like, you wish he got more to do, just because I love hearing him talk. Like,
yeah, he's very
incredible voice.
Yeah, he's got a great cadence about him. Yeah, a shame again that we didn't get him in a little bit of a larger role. But yeah, that's a pretty fun one though to look back on and say, when you look at the like more famous voice actors and actresses, in voice acting, it's almost shocking when they haven't shown up in some sort of role in the DCAU. I feel like
absolutely, for no doubt about that. And then playing Miss Berkeley, the sort of headmistress of the class, is Diane Delano. She was in The Wicker Man with Nicolas Cage as sort of an evil nun or something, and has done some other voice acting work as well, to her credit, as including for Young Justice and a few other things. So, and then yeah, in another minor role, you mentioned some DCAU alum. We'll save the big one maybe for a minute here, but Robert Costanza, Mr. Bullock himself, playing Titus Sweet, the arms dealer who's disguised himself as a toy donator to Mr. Dolan here. I mean, great, because he's got like the perfect like sketchy mob guy voice, like just by default. So he just, it is very noticeable that Harvey Bullock is talking when he's on the screen, but as far as what he's being asked to do in the episode, which is kind of this shady guy being like, don't worry about where these things are coming from, just accept it. Like, he's very, like, it's perfect, like perfect for that type of role in general, even if it's very, noticeable that it's because he played such a memorable character in the other shows.
Yeah. I think it's equally funny that his character in the show also kind of looks like the real life Robert Costanzo, also somewhat resembles him, I'd say. So that's cute also. But yeah, it's one of those where hearing that voice come out of a different character is a little bit distracting. You're like, oh, it's Harvey Bullock. Why is Harvey Bullock 50 years from now a shady businessman? Maybe, same voice. Bullock wasn't necessarily in the animated series portrayed as somebody on the take as he was, later on in Caped Crusader, but he wasn't always above board either. That wasn't exactly flat out said that he was no good, not a good cop. But who knows? Maybe this is a distant relative of Mr. Bullock, and therefore he's kind of just given into that temptation to be involved with the darker side of life.
Absolutely. So just very quickly, we have Landry Albright as Kaylee. That's the little girl that's getting bullied at the school. Erica Hubbard playing the lead bully of that group, and we have Ian James Corlett playing Lowe, who is Titus Sweet's right hand man, and maybe is even more directly based on Telly Savalas than the Lex Luthor design is. But definitely, he's another bald guy, and he's got an earring, so he was like, I was like watching that scene. He's only in like one scene, but I was like, this is a funny design. I like the way this guy's look. He's got an earring. I like that they just added that in for a little flavor there. But yeah, let's get to our main villain of the piece here. Another Batman animated series DCAU alum. Playing Roden Crick is Richard Mall, Two-Face slash the Bat Computer himself. And wouldn't you know it, this guy kind of has a big chunk of his face missing. So what are the odds here? But yeah, he did not voice him in the original episode. That was Keith Sarabaka. But here we have Richard Mole here. I will say, sometimes when he starts getting all growly and menacing, it is just Two-Face.
Yes, 100%. Especially
kind of the
his
same
opening line.
about,
The opening line of the show is him he's yelling, like they're riding alongside neck and neck with Zeta and screaming out of his window, and he says, "Look at me," which I was like, that's the line that Two-Face has in one of the I think it's in the dream sequence, like that Bruce has after he's converted into Two-Face. So he has this like haunting way of saying that. I was like, he delivered that the exact same way. And I was like, maybe it was on purpose now that we have this character, as you mentioned, who is sort of like half and half, like half cybernetic, half real life man. There's a little nod there. But yeah, I mean, of course it's a great performance, but I would be lying if I was saying it was not distracting to have the villain sound like Two-Face the entire time. Albeit this guy's a little bit more gun happy, I feel like, than Two-Face was.
Agreed. But yeah, it's just funny. Like I said, it's not as if he's doing a bad job. It's just impossible not to hear it in that scene. And then yeah, we have our three other main characters to talk about for the episode. Blaine Barbosa as Bucky took over from the original voice actor. I think in maybe the previous time here for season 2, he's our Bucky. And look, you're right. I will begrudgingly admit that he is much less annoying in this episode because him and Ro aren't bickering constantly, which was, I feel like, a hallmark of his previous appearances. So like there is a little bit of them bantering at the beginning and at the end of the episode, but it's like when the chips are down, he's being pretty serious, and it does seem like he's trying to make up for his past sins, so to speak. So Blaine Barbosa as Bucky, of course, interacting with mostly with Julie Nathanson as Ro here, and again because Diedrich Bader is kind of he's indisposed in the present day for most of the episode, and then he is mostly in disguise as Dolan in the flashbacks. We don't actually get as much Diedrich Bader in this episode, but I think our three main characters do an admirable job of, and I think especially Miss Nathanson as Ro once again, because again, I think especially like you said, putting that bit of her flashback in, you could say, is kind of superfluous and not needed, but her sort of framing what Zeta did for her and then what it would mean to her if Zeta is gone, like what it would mean for her at that point. Again, I feel like that really adds to the emotional stakes of the episode. So a big thumbs up for Miss Nathanson, especially, I think.
No, she definitely has the lion's share of the duty for this episode, and it is an emotional roller coaster. She's kind of scared. She's freaking out about Zeta, obviously, so she's got a lot to emote for the episode. So she really impressed me and kind of left me kind of here thinking this episode as a whole is like, man, she's very talented, and obviously I think we've spotlighted her and Mr. Bader as often as we possibly can, is just to not dwell on the negative that kind of seems to follow this show around. But this is, I think, this is just a great showcase of her talent and being able to kind of carry the episode for the majority of the modern day storytelling that was done in the episode, as opposed to the flashbacks. So, and even some in the flashbacks. So, for all those reasons, I ended up giving voice acting a very strong 8 out of 10. What about you?
Yeah, same for me. 8 out of 10. Like I said, maybe some of those voice choices were a little distracting because of who we know them to be in other things, but I still thought everybody on an individual level was giving a great performance overall. So, yeah, great job by everybody.
All right, Liam. Well, that will bring us to our final scores for the episode, and totaling everything up for the episode, I will have to check. This is uncharted territory. Speaking of Uncharted, final score for this one, a 29 out of 40. I think this is going to be, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, without checking, this is the highest rated Zeta Project episode we've ever covered.
Yeah, and I would definitely assume that's the case because I believe my final score puts me at 31 out of 40. I can't possibly imagine there's been another Zeta episode that's cracked the 30s.
I would say I don't even think we've hit
before
30.
this.
Yeah, I don't think we've hit 30. I would be very surprised if we ever cracked 30 before. So that says a lot here. I mean, is this a 2 thumbs up for rewatchability? It's important because it gives you the full backstory of Zeta and Ro, gives you their full character flesh outs. And now, as far as like important to the whole DCAU, I guess that's the argument for it, but it's also a really good episode.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's I mean, we talk about this all the time. Our characters are better off than they were at the start, much to my chagrin, perhaps, but they've kind of righted the wrongs of Bucky leaving them hanging in the previous episode, so he's back in their good graces. And then again, we get to see, even in a quick sort of simple way, see how much, Zeta and Ro's relationship has benefited Ro. And as Zeta explains, in detail why, it wasn't just a snap thing that he suddenly decided to be good now. He, it was over this multiple day period where he's living as this person that it changes him, which again, they talk about in that first episode when he's kidnapped Max and he's explaining why he's gone rogue. So yeah, I think this is a big double thumbs up for rewatchability, shockingly enough. Another probable rare, if not first, for this show.
That's right. I think if you had told either of us going into this week that we would give an episode 2 thumbs up and it would crack 30, I think you would say that we watched the wrong show. But here we are, and it says a lot. So again, we talk about it usually when we're reviewing these, going out of your way to find a legal way to watch these episodes is a little bit difficult. But there is a archive.org high-res version of this show that you can find if you Google it. So that might be something, if you're going to watch an episode of the Zeta Project that isn't the Batman Beyond crossover, maybe it's this episode if you want to see just a good cartoon.
Yeah, and it's a prequel, so right? So it's it still fits in.
There you go. All right, Liam, well, that will be going to wrap us up for this week's episode. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Don't forget, we would love some support for the podcast. If you've listened this long, please make sure you stop what you're doing and leave a 5-star review with us on your podcast application of choice, whether that is Apple Podcast or Spotify. If you're listening on Apple Podcast, if you can leave us a 5-star review with a little blurb. If you do, we'll read the review on the air here. And if you're in the US, we'll send you a little thank you gift just for doing so. If you listen on Spotify, you can give the podcast 5 stars after you have to listen to it a couple of times. So hopefully this isn't the first episode you've ever tuned into. But if it is, welcome. But if it is not, you've listened to a couple episodes, leave us a 5-star review for the pod. And then you can always comment on every single episode that we post. Leave your thoughts on the episode itself, or maybe a comment on something that we said that you agree or disagree with. You can also join on Spotify. Check out the poll of the week. That is also in the show notes. Speaking of interacting with us, suppose you would like to interact with us on one of our social media pages, please check out Twitter X or Instagram at DCAU Review. We are also on Blue Sky and Threads and Facebook, but those are not the main ways or best ways to get in touch with us, as they are not checked as often as Twitter and Instagram. So, but either way, if you contact us on one of those places, we will eventually respond to you. Of course, we love interacting, hearing your thoughts. If you've seen this episode and you're a fan, please let us know that you agree with us. And if you disagree, you think maybe we hit our heads or something before this week's episode, don't be afraid to let us know that as well. You can also, of course, if you want to support the podcast, we talked about buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. You can also check out the show notes and check out our merch store as well if you want to buy a shirt or something. Also, please don't forget to follow us on our YouTube page. Perhaps you're listening to us there. Subscribe to us, please. Make sure you like the videos. And if you are not subscribed to us on YouTube and you have a YouTube account, you want to help us out, stop what you're doing, go and subscribe, or check out the show notes. Just click on whatever podcast platform you're looking for. Click on the show notes. It'll take you to our YouTube page there. The link is in our show notes there. You can just subscribe and like the videos. That helps us out as well. Liam, this means we are done this month. We are, as we said, this is our 5th to last episode of Zeta Project Reviews, 4 to go. The countdown continues on. However, next week we will be bidding adieu for Zeta for just a little while at least, as we turn to our 5th Saturday of the month, which means we are taking a trip around the multiverse for an Elseworlds month for week 5 of May. Let's talk about what we'll be reviewing next week.
Absolutely, Cal. 5th Saturday of the month. It's Elseworlds time, and we're going to venture into an Elseworld we've only visited, I believe, twice before across our many, many episodes of this show, which is kind of crazy given how popular it is and how much, at least I loved it when it was airing. That being the original Teen Titans animated series. And we're going to be picking up with a season 1 episode. As we discovered when looking for something to cover, this month marks the birthday of legendary comic book writer and kind of architect of the new Teen Titans comic of the 80s, Marv Wolfman. It's his birthday back on May the 13th. So we thought we'd pick an episode of the animated series that he wrote back from season 1, that being called Deep Six, which features not only our main Titans team, but also the first appearance in that show of Aqualad. So lots to talk about last week. Aquafantasma lives forever, and we'll continue on next week with the review of Deep Six from Teen Titans.
Looking forward to that one, Liam. Again, we haven't visited Teen Titans too much in our series history, and obviously is a very important series when it comes to DC animation as a whole. So looking forward to covering that one with you next week. But until then, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we will talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU.
Bye-bye.
DC High Volume, Batman. The Dark Knight's definitive DC Comics stories, adapted directly for audio for the very first time.
Fear. I have to make them afraid.
He's got a motorcycle. Get after him or I'll have you shot.
What do you mean blow up the building?
From this moment on, none of you are safe.
New episodes every Wednesday, wherever you get your podcasts.